Thank you for the video. I would like to invite Ms. Zdenka to deliver her talk.
Good morning. It's good to be back with you again. So I'm going to talk to you about an effort that is a combination between the Marine Technology Society, the Global Ocean Observing System, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. And it's also recognized Ocean Decade Action, and it's called the Dialogue with Industries. It's a forum for compact and meaningful dialogue with new and established companies, academia, not-for-profit, and government. The dialogue's aim is to highlight opportunities for the public and the private sectors to work in partnership towards achieving a mature and vibrant ocean observing enterprise that will help accelerate the development of a thriving blue economy, and they were highlighted as an upcoming initiative of interest in the June 2020 ICP meeting. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the anticipated growth of the ocean or blue economy has been well documented. The OECD's report predicted the ocean economy will reach $3 trillion by 2030. And in June of 2022, the United States Department of Commerce found that the America's blue economy contributed to about $361 billion of the nation's gross domestic product across 10 sectors representing businesses dependent on the nation's oceans, coast, and Great Lakes. In addition, NOAA, GOOS, and MTS are seeing a growth in businesses that are either providing ocean observing platforms and sensors, providing ocean observations as a service, and or using ocean information to provide a product for sale. These businesses are termed the ocean enterprise in a USA report. The United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom have developed consistent surveys to determine the value and trends of the ocean enterprise. In all three countries, the trend is positive. For example, within the United States, since the first study in 2015, the number of businesses grew by almost 60%, and the annual revenue grew by $1 billion. The dialogue with industry was created to lower barriers and increase opportunities for the maritime sectors and technologies to be part of a thriving and fit-for-purpose global ocean observing system. The blue economy will not reach its potential without data from ocean observations, and the vision underlying the dialogues is that ocean observing systems in the future will be multi-sectorial with public and private organizations as well as public-private partnerships on a local, national, regional, and global level, contributing to the ocean observing networks through sensors, platforms, data delivery, and service. So on this slide here, you see a value chain approach from observations to end users. It allows us to illustrate how ocean observations are converted through a wide range of interactions, transformations, service delivery mechanisms to produce information and products and services that have value to decision makers and business leaders, and thus the importance of ocean information and related services and ocean observations and predictions of which they are based on. The private sector can play a role in any part or multiple parts of the value chain, and we have developed a background paper that describes those concepts. To date, there's perhaps most private sector activity in the technology around sensors and platforms. However, there is a great scope for advanced technologies and services across the range of ocean observing value chain, from observations through data management, modeling, assessment, to application and services. We very much see the driving factors Oh, sorry, can we go back a slide, please? Thank you. So you see the driving services of climate change and ocean management, and you see this ocean value chain. And so we very much believe that public and private organizations, as well as public-private partnerships at local, national, and regional and global levels, are going to contribute to any number of these elements. It definitely reinforces that the ocean observing networks of the future will be multi-sectorial. Now we can move forward. Thank you. So what was the format of these dialogues? The format of the dialogues were curated, moderated discussions with invited participants. And the reason that we went with invited participants is we wanted to make sure we had a diverse range of industries, not-for-profit, married up with the academic and the government sector. There was a case study that was developed for each of these dialogues. You might think of them as a tabletop exercise. And they were broken in 2 to 3 sections with applicable questions. And those case studies were also given to the participants to allow them to help us develop them. And then the dialogues were moderated by the Marine Technology Society's Executive Director, Chris Ostrander. So the 20 to 25 participants interacted throughout the dialogue, and you can see the 4 topics that we have here. And at the very end, we also invited observers who could self-register for these dialogues, and we had anywhere from 80 to 135 observers who could listen and provide input via the question and answer in the chat function. And then the last part of the dialogue, we opened it up for everyone to be able to talk with us. And so we've developed reports after each of the dialogues. The dialogue themselves, the video is available, and 3 of the 4 reports are completed, and we're finalizing the 4th report, and they're all available on the MTS and GOOS website. Next slide. So I have 2 slides. I am not going to go over every single highlight that we came up with, and these slides don't come up with all the highlights, and I don't have time to talk about each one. But I'm going to talk about a selected number of the highlights just to give you a flavor for the conversation. So the ocean sector market actually needs further articulation. The studies such as the NOAA-IOC Ocean Enterprise Report are vital to convincing investors that startups are addressing real needs and marketplaces. There's a need for independent and credible market evaluation that addresses both the international scale of the ocean observing enterprise, as well as smaller niche markets such as the uncrewed systems market. So the ocean observing market is often framed in the context in support of other market sectors. So a question's been raised, and we don't have the answer to it, is whether the ocean observing market is really a standalone market sector on its own. The Ocean Enterprise Study from the United States says that ocean enterprise sector is worth $8 billion annually. So we believe it's there, but these market studies are important. This is an interesting one that was very revealing to me. From the government, which is where a lot of my background comes from, it says, we want low-cost, easy-to-use sensors. And the industry members came back to us and said, however, easy to use and affordable is often conflated with low development cost. But it's actually the opposite. An easy-to-use technology requires longer development times and significant effort to build in the operational intelligence required so that it means easy to use. Higher development cost also means higher risk. If the ocean observing community is interested in easy-to-use instrumentation, then industry will need some guarantee of the market size or other methods to reduce investment risk. There is a new paradigm of data mission as a service. There's a long history of this in the space remote sensing sector, and more recently in the meteorological sector with the purchase of the commercial radio occultation data. While licensing data validation, quality assurances are issues that need to be solved, This business model can alleviate some acquisition, operation, and maintenance costs. Investments in a sustainable blue business model trails behind that of the green or land. And that's because many investors perceive such investments as too risky. And further, these investments are looking for data and observations to reduce or de-risk their investments. This can be, however, we think there is a market to use these blue investments to reduce risk in areas such as carbon credits, marine carbon storage, as well as others. So the business community really is looking to ocean observing and ocean knowledge to help them de-risk the opportunities, but we have to make a better case for that and be able to articulate that. Standards came up in every single session. And the question is, what do we mean by standards? Are they data standards? Are they standards for the equipment? We will continue to further investigate what we mean by standards. There is a shift from government-owned and distributed data to commercially procured to a commercially procured model. And there are legal licensing questions that have come up as we move to that model. Again, this is something that we can look to the space sector to help us accelerate our acceptance of commercial information. What was interesting to me is that in general, countries consider data needed for weather forecasting, which is mostly collected from terrestrial stations or from space, as an essential element to the operation of a country. That is not so for ocean data. We don't have that similar understanding that ocean information is equally important to the weather information to running of a country. We need to fully recognize that criticality. We need to change that perception, and we means the entire community talking about that together. The hybrid public-private observing architectures require a better understanding of how each of the components work. An academic institution works very differently than a government organization that works very differently from the industry. We must develop that trust and that working knowledge of how each of us work to be able to make these hybrid architectures a reality. There needs to be, and finally on from the first two, and I have one more slide that talks about dialogues 3 and 4, is how do we aggregate the demand? You know, is that aggregation going to be at that coastal level where we have people who live along the coast and we can understand? Or how do we aggregate in those international waters? How do we use the international conventions to be able to help us aggregate this information in the international waters? You know, and that came up in the next two dialogues as well. So let's go to the next slide, please. So again, some key events for the last two dialogues. And again, I won't be going through all of these. So we define intermediaries are those either companies or even the private sector who takes ocean information, and usually if it's from the government, it's at no cost, and make a commercial product out of there. So it is recognized that this is probably the biggest area of growth. But the question is, whose role and who's going to do what? And it's fine if the lines are blurred, but this can actually impede our private sector partners. And meaning is, you know, folks are used to getting their ocean information products at no cost. What is the role of the government from a warning perspective to provide that safety of information at no cost? And what is the role of the private sector that can actually make a business? So that will be a constant discussion back and forth on the blurred lines. This co-designing of services, that's a term we're hearing now, co-production, co-design. You know, what does that really mean? I mean, part of what I talked about is understanding each component from their various sectors, but it really also means starting with the user. You know, who is your customer? What is that customer's need? Make the customer central to that discussion and actually design the solution together. We hear that a lot, but it's definitely a little harder to do than just saying that. It requires a very broad and committed working relationship. Back to understanding the impact of ocean observing. This is very similar to what we heard from the market discussion in the first dialogue. You know, what is the impact? What are those case studies? How do we know that the money that we're going to put out for ocean observing is going to give us the right return on investment? And how do you articulate that? Return on investment from a government agency is not the same as return on investment for a private company. So what are those KPIs that we can discuss return on investment for a government funding and for industry funding? It was interesting that in our last discussion, there was a statement made that said observations from ships were broadly reviewed as diminishing with a push towards carbon footprint. That is not to say that we don't think there is a place for shipboard research or shipboard observations. There certainly is going to be a place. But we, as the stewards of the ocean and the ocean observing community, we need to be on the forefront from all of our technologies to make sure that we are good stewards of the resource of the ocean, whether that is in smart technologies for our ships, in zero emission types of ships, whether it is how we smartly use our observing platform. One of the most successful global ocean observing system is called Argo. It's a profiling float. But after about 800 floats run out of battery power every year, and they go to the bottom of the ocean. It is made, there's a lithium battery in there, it is made of plastic. So while it is low in an impact compared to everyday use plastic, there is still an impact. There are companies that are looking at how to use the ocean's temperature as the power source so a profiling float can be indefinite. There is the uncrewed vehicles, the autonomous vehicles that are recoverable. All of that's going to help us understand the ocean at a much better level and also reduce our carbon footprint. And then let me end with one final point that came up in every single dialogue, and that was the importance of and the criticality of the workforce. The workforce of the new blue economy is going to need new skills, artificial intelligence being one of them. It's going to require integrative and multiple skills from engineering to computer science to communications to English to lawyers to finance. All of that's going to be part of this ocean enterprise if we want to move forward. And we have, let's face it, hard to attract people into ocean as a career. I can stand out here and tell you I have had a very successful career, and it's all been based on the ocean. But when we go and we talk to students, or we talk to around to our Rotary clubs or to other avenues, we ask, how many of you consider using your engineering degree, your computer science degree, your communications degree, your finance degree? How many of you consider that you can have the career in the oceans? Don't get a lot of hands, right? You understand the aviation business, you understand the transportation business, you understand the security business, but you don't understand that we really have, an amazing career, a very challenging career. We say anybody can make a robot work on land. We can make an electric car work on land. But what about when it gets into the water? It's harsh conditions. There's no communications. You want a challenge? You want excitement? Come work in the ocean sector. We say we rock. So I'm going to go to my last slide here. So what's next on these dialogues? They have, go forward. There we go. They have been a real blast to put together. It's been a real learning experience, and it's been a lot of work. We are finishing our 4th report. We're starting to communicate. You are the first audience that we can actually communicate all 4 dialogues, so you're a first. We're writing a synthesis report. We're also working with NOAA, who's looking to fund additional work in this area. What we'd really like to do is kind of hone in on maybe 4, 5, 6 things that industry really told us was important and get smart minds working on solutions. So that's how we're going to go forward, because in the end, we want to build a vibrant ocean enterprise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the information of how industry, science, and government together can advance the ocean, and giving a brief about the vast career opportunities on ocean. Thank you, ma'am. I request all the guests to move to the green room for the refreshment, and all the participants can go to the back side of the hall for the refreshment. Thank you. After the refreshment, it will be followed by the keynote sessions.
பாஸ் பண்ணலாம் வெயிட் we are coming back அப்படின்னு தான் இருக்கும் ஆல்ரெடி
67 சப்ஸ்கிரைபர் தான் இருக்காங்க.
அவங்களுக்கு தேவையானது
எங்கே ஸ்டாப் வச்சுருந்தா ஸ்டாப் ஸ்ட்ரீமிங்
டாப் ஸ்ட்ரீமிங் வேணாம் பாஸ் இருக்கும்
பாஸ்ன்னு ஒரு ஆப்ஷன் இருக்கவே இல்லை. இல்லை பாஸ்ன்னு ஒரு
ஆப்ஷனே இல்லையா
இல்லையா ஸ்டாப் ஸ்ட்ரீமிங் தான் இருக்குது.
சரி தெரில அவ்வளோதான் கேட்கும்
அதுதான் இருக்கும்னு பார்த்தா ஆளே கிளம்பி
அவன் சாப்பாடு தான் கிளம்பிட்டான் ஓடிட்டான்
வேணா ஸ்டாப் பண்ணுவா பாஸ் பண்ணுவோமா?
பாஸ் பண்ணு அப்படியே ஓடிட்டோம் வராது
சரி ஓகே.
நீ எப்படா பாஸ் பண்ணுறது
ஏய்
சும்மா வந்து கதை விட்டு ஓடிட்டான்
ஸ்டாப் தான் ஸ்டாப் தானா ஸ்டாப்